Hello and welcome one and all to yet another Sunday evening and yet another edition of the Skip Barber 2K World Cup here on RaceSpotTV. My name is Connery Manick and I'll be your commentator for this evening. I'll be joined by Nolan Rempel in just a couple of moments' time, but welcome one and all to the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, where we are about to get this round of the 2K Skip Barber World Cup underway. Well, fantastic circuit indeed. Not often seen on a lot of leagues over the course of iRacing, but 2K will visit this track here very early on in the season. We can just take a look at where the season will take us throughout these next couple of months. We already had two fantastic rounds, both at Road Atlanta and at Interlagos, but we head to Mid-Ohio for round number 3 of the championship. Imola will be coming up next on May the 9th with Hockenheim, our new circuit here on iRacing, on the May 23rd. Then you go to Long Beach, Summit Point and Suzuka, and that's about it, apart from round 12's Lime Rock Park. With regards to the track stats we actually know that we're going to, of course we have those unknowns towards the very back end of the season when it comes to which track we are going to go towards. So big unknowns and, well, maybe a little bit of a curveball thrown in here and there towards the end of the season. Of course, we've had 2 doubleheaders already so far this season, and this is going to be our first non-doubleheader, believe it or not. So we're going to have a 32-lap race here today. Qualifying is the same as ever, though. 5 minutes, but you only get that single lap here in lone qualifying. That's what makes qualifying so interesting here in the 2K Skip Barber World Cup. You do get a fast repair as well, so if you've been it early on, you can get back in the race and get back out there. And of course, there's the forced fuel stop as well, with the fuel being limited to 40% in these cars. The expected pit stop window, well, we have 2 expected pit stop windows here today. Unlike the double-headed headers where we only have that 1 scheduled stop in the feature race, we'll have 2 scheduled stops here today, since this is only a single header, so a bit of an extended race. So lap 16 to 13 is when you'll first start to see cars bring themselves down on towards the pit lane, and lap on to 19 to 26 is going to be your sort of second pit stop window for all intents and purposes. So keep an eye out for that during the course of this one, because strategy is always a big sort of thing here in the 2K Championship with regards to the track position in particular. But let's have a look at the point system then. Of course, you know, simple as ever. 50 points for a race win, 47 for second place, 45, and then you can see all the numbers further back. The top 40 cars do score themselves championship points here today. We have currently 29 cars signed up, so everyone's getting a decent amount of points at the moment. You get bonus points in qualifying as well, 6 points for getting pole position, and then you see the order down to 5. So top 5 in qualifying get themselves points, and the interesting sort of bonus point situation here in the 2K Championship, 1 point for every 3 laps you lead. So it's not just a single bonus point if you lead a lap at any point. If you lead 3 laps, you get a bonus point. If you lead 3 more laps, then you will get another bonus point. So it's always beneficial to keep yourself in the race lead here and log those race-led laps. As we get ourselves switched over into the qualifying session, then we'll have a quick peek at how our standings stack up here coming into round number 3 of the championship. Kame Halliburton currently top of the pile in terms of points on 152. Diogo Francisco on 140. Anthony Cat 135. Simon Edwards and Christian Perez are tied 130 points there for P4. We've got Gonzalo Calvo in P6, just 1 point ahead of Philippe Lebert. Then you've got Ludwig Guidi, Sam Kietert, and Giuseppe Tellini rounding out the top 10 in terms of the points order. But of course, it is a very early days here in terms of championship, so that can all swap around over the next couple of rounds. And then we'll see how the points lay out when we get towards the end of the season at the end of the year. Still a very long way to go here in this series. Qualifying has started though, so not too long. Well, in the future we'll get this race started. But remember, it is just this one and done qualifying here. You only get that single chance to be able to get yourself at the very top of the timing order. You can see Gustavo Conde out there just weaving out there, trying to get the tires up to temperature, get them up to pressures as well, as we'll ride on board with him on his out lap here. Of course, you know, he has to focus and has to get into the groove, and you know, many drivers, especially veterans in this series, be very well aware that if you mess up qualifying, then that's basically your whole race day messed up, unless you can make some very good forward progress during the racing event. Gustavo Conde might be having a couple of technical issues there, unfortunately, but we can go and have a look at someone else. Let's have a look at Diogo Francisco then, the Iberian driver out there. I think he has come across the line to start a lap here, so let's ride on board with him as he gets that car in towards the keyhole. Such a tricky portion of the track. You have to really try and wrestle that car in towards the apex. These cars especially really want to step out on you coming through there, but now you just nail the throttle. This will be one of the big slipstream zones here, coming down into the big braking zone. This is where you're going to see a lot of passes here in towards China Beach. And now Diogo Francisco again, the car feeling so nervous coming through these apexes. Careful with the elevation change here, coming over the top of the crest. The car can step out, and it does for Diogo Francisco, but he's able to keep it together. Absolutely fantastic stuff. Under the Honda bridge, then through these little S's here. Get the car slowed down once again, uphill a little bit here. You can monster that curve on the inside. The curbs don't really punish you here in this one. And now you head towards the final sector. Spot your braking point into the left here. Just get it flung in. Carry as much momentum as you can. Momentum is so important in these cars. You can't get caught out of line at all. You can't deviate from it. Otherwise, you're going to be losing a lot of time. Through the final corner now. And across the line, Diogo Francisco, what sort of position does he go up into? It's provisional pole at the moment because he is the first one across the line, but can he hold on to that provisional pole position? He cannot. Your championship leader of Kane Halliburton getting himself up into the pole position at the moment. Here comes Ludwig Guidi then. As Guidi heads his way across the line. It's going to be a 1:36.518 to beat, and it's a 1:36.7, so it puts him down in P7. Still a respectable starting spot there for Ludwig Guidi. We still have a good couple of runners yet to head their way across the line to complete their qualifying laps. You have Remco Pleelge here, just getting himself towards the final sector. He will be one of the final qualifiers here. Just to give you an update though, Sam Kietert, Hans Hoyer, Gustavo Conde, a couple of other drivers as well, Robalta, Zingretti, Camerini, they have not been able to set themselves qualifying times here. So remember what I said about the one and done qualifying. If you mess up, you get the 1x and get your lap invalidated, then that is basically it. Pleelge heading his way across the line now, and comes P15 here in the qualifying order. And that is basically everyone. I'm trying to see where Neil Kemp is. Oh, Neil Kemp just getting a lap in at the death there. But it's going to be only good enough for P number 17 at the end of the qualifying session here today for Mr. Kemp. Let's see what progress he can make from there. But, well, that is basically the qualifying completely and utterly done here today. Let's take a look at your starting grid then in just a couple of moments for round number 3 of the 2K Skip Barber World Cup. This time coming at you from mid-Ohio. Let's take a look at exactly how they stack up. Kane Halliburton, pole position with Martin Cruz on that front row. Benny Simonson and Anthony Catt comprise of row number 2, with row number 3 going to Philip Hammer and Diogo Francisco. Those are the positions down to P6. Philippe Lebert in P7 with Ludwig Guidi in P8. Manuel Lucetta in P9 with Alexis Vico P10. Edwin Valerino and Giuseppe Tellini will round out the top 12 cars here today. Simon Edwards, P13 with Joshua Dancy, P14, Remco Plesja in P15, and then you have George Matuszynski in P16. Neil Kemp and Ali Favero further back through the order, and then we can scroll all the way through as we get ourselves Ronan Griffin, McGowan, you got Samalo, Sierra, Fogarini, and Keatert lining up down in P number 24 here today. The very back of the starting grid here today, well, those are going to be the names of Rebelta, Conde, Camerini, Zingretti, and Hans Hoyer. So that's your starting grid here today in the 2K Skip Barber World Cup. Round number 3. We'll get ourselves started in just a couple of moments' time here. What a series this is. We've had some fantastic racing so far already, but it looks like that's going to be the case here at Mid-Ohio as well. If history is anything to go by, gridding procedure still underway. Now the drivers are ready and raring to go. What's going to happen here at Mid-Ohio for our first single header of the season in the Skip Barber 2K World Cup? We're off and away. The green flag is waving, and the Skip Harbors head their way down in towards turn number 1 for the first time. Great start there from Kane Halliburton from pole position. He's able to get cleanly ahead of Martin Cruz coming into the first turn. Cruz, second place, Benny Simonson. Oh, someone's gone off wildly in the background. Daniele Fogarini has had a massive off there, and I think someone else was involved as well. Ribalta, I believe, had a massive moment as well. So we'll have to go and see if we can go and take a look at exactly what happened to those guys there, because that was a big moment right at the very back of the starting grid. We'll have a look at it. What's happened here? Oh, it's just, what is that? Ribalta just completely cleaning out one car on his right-hand side there. We'll have to cycle things back to get a little bit of a better look at that one. That's not going to be a very good look at all. Let's cycle it even further back. This is the onboard with Ribalta. What happened here down in towards turn number 1? He's not clear in front, and he just runs straight into the back of Fogarini there. That's a very severe error there on the part of Ribalta. We'll head back towards the live pictures though, and we'll look towards the very front of the field as we are coming towards the end of the first lap of 32 here in this third round of the championship. Kane Halliburton still leads them around from Martin Cruz, then Benny Simonson, Anthony Cat, Philip Hammer, Diego Francisco, Philippe Leber, Ludwig Guidi, Emmanuel Lucetta are your top 10 cars. So as they head their way across the line, let's pull up the order on the left-hand side of your screen then, as they'll steam their way through towards turn number 1. And, well, Benny Simonson going to be sizing up for a move here in towards the hairpin. Let's see if he goes for it. Looks to the inside on Martin Cruz. Can he improve position? He slings it down in there, and well, there's a pretty easy pass, all things considered, as long as he can get the speed. Coming off the corner, Martin Cruz, big moment. He's out into the grass. He's able to hold on to it somehow, though. My word, what a neat bit of driving there for Cruz to be able to hold on to that when it was looking oh so dire. Let's just take another look at that. There's the pass there for Benny Simonson in towards the hairpin, but look at this moment from the man in the 204 as he gets loose off the corner, gets out onto the grass and into the curb, gets spat towards the inside onto the other piece of grass, but he's still able to hold on to it. What a fantastic a bit of driving there from Martin Cruz. He does lose a good handful of positions though. He's now down in towards P number 8, but still very much within touch of the leading pack there. So a pretty frantic opening 2 laps of this one. There's been a lot of casualties further back through the order. I mean, we saw the issue with Ribalta, Simon Edwards also having issues early on as well. Edwin Vanarino has been cycled back through the order too. And I get myself another co-commentator in the commentary booth as well. Nolan Rempel is preparing himself and getting himself ready to join me here today. But until we can do that, just admire this leading train heading their way around for the moment. This is kind of what we've come to see here in the 2K Skip Barber World Cup. You know, it's been this way as far as I can remember on RaceSpotTV. Everyone keeping themselves very close together in their packs, and why not make any changes at this point? Here comes the move for the race lead then. That's Benny Simonson looking to gain all of the track position and go side by side with his competitor, side by side with Halliburton, and they continue going wheel to wheel through the middle sector here. Simonson, oh, there's contact. Halliburton spat out into the grass. Doesn't hit the wall though, careful with the rejoin. Ludwig Guidi had taken massive avoiding action to not get caught up in that. Somehow he survives, but that was a slightly dodgy rejoin there on the part of Kane Halliburton. Let's have a cycle back and let's have another look, because here is the onboard view of Ludwig Guidi. It happened all in front of him here. As you can see, those leaders all stack up, go side by side, but Guidi's going to get the best view of all of them here. There's Kane Halliburton into the grass, and wow! Huge avoiding action from Guidi there. As Nolan Rempel, I welcome you to the commentary box.
Well, I seem to have popped in at exactly the right time to witness that. Good grief, what a rejoin there from Halliburton.
Yeah, that was absolutely incredible. Almost collects Guidi though, so it wasn't the best rejoin. It was a good handling of the car to make sure he doesn't find a wall or or be pointed in the wrong direction. But still, I don't think the stewards will be too happy about that rejoin there. But Ludwig Guidi, he's going to be trying to get his heart rate down at the moment, I think, because he had a massive scare.
And that he did. That's always the worst thing to see, is when you have a car coming onto the track right in front of you and you're already pretty much committed to the corner. But great job in Guidi there. He kind of throw his way over to the outside there. Meanwhile, they're side by side for the race lead just in front, with Benny Simonson trying to fend off Anthony Catton, who would try to have a go around the outside line at the end of the straight down the into turn number 4. But no dice as Philip Hammer tries to cut back.
Yeah, Hammer's looking to make some progress here as well. Tries to get the cut back coming off the corner. Not going to find too much success in that one just yet. These cars are feeling oh so loose at the moment. It seems like track conditions are a little bit sketchy at the moment here as they head their way towards that third and final sector of the lap. Everyone single file inside this leading pack, but you get the feeling that it can all change in a single moment's notice. But of course, like I was telling the viewers, Nolan, earlier on, this is our first single header event that we've had so far this season. Our first 2 races have been double headers, but we only get the 1 race here today, but it is a little bit extended in terms of its length, so we'll get 2 scheduled pit stop windows here, Nolan. So a lot of opportunity on the strategy.
Indeed, and the strategy game could very well be what wins your race here today. We saw it in Interlagos even, just how critical the strategy can be and just how easy it is to really mess up the strategy and just cost yourself a race win. Hopefully we won't be seeing a similar situation happen today, but you never know. With 2K World Cup, just about anything can happen.
Yeah, I think that's the I think that's the moral of the story. We've had some absolutely amazing finishes already so far in this season, and well, I don't see why we can't have one again today. But yeah, we'll have to see. We don't get the characteristic run out of the final corner to the line here on this one, though, because the pit straight here is so short that you don't really have much of a slipstream opportunity to get things done towards the line. So I don't think we'll get to see any crazy side-by-side moments to the checkered flag, although I've been wrong before, and these guys will probably find some way to make that happen.
Well, it's like we said just a couple of weeks ago, this track is a very, very technical one. It's a lot more flowing and twisting than the last few races have been, and of course, it's got a lot of elevation change in it too. It's a pretty violent elevation change in some portions as well. That's why these cars are really so loose here, especially as you go over the hills of some of the crests here there. In particular, I think turns 8 and 9 kind of stand out to me, as well as 5 and 6.
Yeah, and of course this is you know, a track that's not often used, I would say, in the iRacing series. Of course, a lot more used than some tracks like VIR, for example, which sort of appears once in the blue moon. I've only commentated a handful of races there, but of course, you know, sometimes it does take a little while for these drivers to get acclimatized to the way this track races. And of course, you know, still promoting that slipstream situation here in these skip barber cars. Maybe not so much here at this racetrack, because your only really big slipstream zone is on that back straight down towards China Beach. Everywhere else, there's just corner after corner after corner after corner. So this is one of the very few racetracks where these skip barber cars, Nolan, really kind of can split up just based on pure pace and not have them clumped up in massive, one big massive train. Of course, we still have a train here at the very front, but it's not 20 cars long.
No, it's only 5 cars long, as a matter of fact. You got first on back to about the 5th position, then got 6th to about 9th, just behind. Then from there, really everybody's kind of just running on their own. I mean, you got a total of, I believe it looks to be 27 cars still out there on the track, and only the first 9 of them are really in this big train up in front. There are a couple of battles going on elsewhere, but you know, they're definitely not nearly as close as what we're seeing up here at the front.
Yeah, this is the second train. Philippe Lebert, actually, he's headed his way down on towards the pit lane. That would be a very, very early stop if so. I wouldn't expect drivers to be coming down so early, but that's what Philippe Lebert has decided to do. Maybe the strategy is a little bit wider here due to the 2 scheduled stops that we'll be getting instead of the single one that we get in the feature race of a double header, for example. But yeah, that's going to be an interesting one there for Philippe Lebert. Let's see what he's able to do with that early stop. He falls basically towards the very back of the field, so we'll see where he files out in relation to everyone once everyone comes down for their first stops. But you got the leading 4 cars at the moment, but it's the battle for P5, which consists of the second train here, Nolan, and they got to be careful because they can't let those leaders get away.
No, absolutely not. You definitely want to make sure that you can keep those leading cars in as best as you can. But I think with how big the gap is kind of split up as it is, I think it's going to be a big ask for that second train to really close on in, unless those guys in front really start to battle, or unless something drastic happens with the overall race leader, Benny Simonsen, that causes the entire of that first train to stack up. And even Benny Simonsen, you can see, he's also started to build a bit of a gap here on Anthony Cat, Philip Hammer, and Diego Francisco just behind.
I mean, I think if there's one track where you can actually try and break this draft and pull out your own lead, it'll probably be this one, given some of the other circuits on the calendar. But yeah, we'll just have to see what sort of progress Benny Simonsen can make, and what sort of progress this second train could make as well, because they're currently sitting about 1.5 seconds off of the back of the leading train, and it's kind of been like that for a while. They haven't really been making all that much forward progress, and of course Kane Halliburton got cycled back into this one after he had his moment at the very front.
Sam Kietert has just come down to pit road, and he's taking a bit of another scheduled stop. I see Ronan Griffin is also down to the lane. Chris McGowan has also made a scheduled pit stop as well, about the same time as Lebert's stop as well. So it seems like quite a few guys here, Connery, are wanting to kind of make the first stop early on here. Maybe kind of have like a sprint first stop, and then have a bit of a longer run out. But it seems like only a lot of guys in the back portion of the field are starting to take to that strategy.
Yeah, I mean, we did have a little bit of contact at the very back of the field at the very start of this race, and they might be just coming down in and try and get their fast repairs early, for example. But yeah, there are a couple of drivers that have decided, well, I'm just going to hedge my bets. I'm going to take the gamble. I'm going to come down early, get into a bit of clear air, and ooh, Kane Halliburton just had Ludwig Guidi go off the circuit in front of him, but Guidi's able to return to the racing line and keep himself ahead. But that's one of the dangers at this circuit, Nolan. There's not a lot of runoff. In fact, in many places there is no runoff. And well, Kane Halliburton heading towards the pits. This is when we'd expect people to start thinking about coming down towards the lane. Diego Francisco came in as well, so this is what I would say is the sort of real opening of the first pit stop window.
I think the big question is going to be, when does Benny Simonsen come down? Because I think that's going to be the big trigger to see a massive kind of exodus down to the pit road, is when Simonsen comes down. You got to kind of follow the race leaders.
I think Kane Halliburton slightly overshot his stop there. He had to just bring it back just a little bit, and yeah, it is a long stop as well. Usually you have 11, 12 seconds on the stop, maybe 9 or so if you're relatively quick about it, but that's a 14.1 second stop there for Kane Halliburton. So yeah, those are the sorts of mistakes where that you can't really afford, especially if you're running at the very top of this championship. Maybe that'll equal a couple of lost positions once everyone's cycled through on their pit stops. So, yeah, unfortunately, that's quite common. At least in terms of the races I commentate, you just have to get yourself stopped in the pit box. You have to get something as simple as that perfect and nailed, because you just can't be losing that sort of unnecessary time.
In fact, that was even 5 seconds longer than Philippe Leber's stop was, because Leber only had a 9.8 second stop. So did everybody else that came down a couple laps sooner. The longest of those stops was only 11.9 seconds, which was about 2 seconds slower than Halliburton's was. So it was definitely a longer stop for sure, but nobody else from these top trains are coming down to the lane. They're going to keep stretching this one out here.
Yeah, I mean, we did see... in particular at Interlagos, with how people were trying to stretch out the stints, and some of them were quite successful at doing so. So it's you know, the fuel concerns are always a thing here in this series. You gotta think about exactly, you know, if you'll be able to get to the end or not. Of course, you know, in modern sim racing, you do have specialized tools that will be able to tell you exactly if you'll be able to get to the end or not. But in the end, it is the driver's decision. And if you go for a short fuel to try and get track position in the pit stops, for example, and have to rely on fuel saving later on, that's you know, that could potentially backfire on you.
How many times have we really seen people try to go for the undercut, but then end up getting close to running out of fuel, or in fact run out of fuel like on the last lap of the race? I mean, about too many to count, so that'd be like the worst possible situation, especially at a track like this here. It's not one of those tracks where you can just be at a high speed, you can kind of lift and coast throughout. If you run out of fuel, even in this kind of a section where they're at right now, the leaders, that's it. You're not making it back there because you just do not have the speed to not only brake, but then take a racing line throughout every single corner to get around.
Yeah, you have to. Are there any visitors, though, towards pit lane this time around from the leading two groups? I'm not spotting anyone deciding to head their way in just yet, so you won't see anyone on the left-hand side have a big old three-letter word picked next to their name just yet, but well, there's still plenty of time left in this first pit stop window for those drivers to come down in and get their service done. It's sometimes a big game of chicken, though, isn't it, Nolan? It's because you don't want to, on most occasions, you don't want to come down in on your own and lack a drafting buddy when you get back out there on circuit. You want to come down in as a group and then come off the pit lane as a group, so then you can return immediately to your slipstreaming, fuel-saving, slingshotting shenanigans.
And speaking of shenanigans, Manuel Lucetta just let Alexis Tapiavico pass in the battle for 6th and 7th. Looked like he kind of backed off a bit earlier for the hairpin that time around, up at turn number 2. So bit of an interesting move there to kind of let him have that position, especially this early into the race.
I mean, it's just all strategic in the minds of the drivers, isn't it? It's if Lucetta wants to get out of the way of everyone and just sit on this back of this train and get some fuel saving done, then I'm not going to blame him for that decision whatsoever. But yeah, it's the gap between the second train and the first grouping continues to extend at this point, though, because we did see it at about 1.5 seconds. Now it's almost doubled. It's up to 3 seconds between the front car of the second train and the back car of the front train. So, you know, the more laps go on here, the more the time this second train is actually losing at the moment, which certainly isn't ideal. But then again, once the pit stops for the majority of drivers get in full swing, then that has the potential to mix things up as well.
Even this second train here started to split on up. They're not nearly nose to tail as they were even about 6 or 7 laps ago. They're much more kind of spread out, not by much, granted, but there is about a 10th or 2 in between each of them now, especially compared when you look up to the top 2 at Philip Hammer now trying to fend off Simonson just behind him.
Yeah, we can have a look back towards that front train there. There they are. So Philip Hammer did get himself up into the race leads, but of course the race lead can be a very dynamic thing in these races, let me tell you that, because you know, they could be swapping positions every single lap, and it's not going to matter in the grand scheme of things until we get towards those final couple of laps. What this has done, though, is allowed Benny Simpson just to slip in and get a little bit of fuel saving done behind Philip Hammer here, so he could potentially be pretty thankful about that, because you know, that's one of the dangers of being the leader and being the leader for a long time, is that you're not going to get as good fuel numbers as you were if you're back in the pack, for example.
Martin Cruz from 4th down to the lane this time by. So he'll start his first pit stop off about 12 laps in with 20 to go. One more car comes in just behind him. That is Giuseppe Tolini, just into the lane shortly behind.
Yep, so Martin Cruz getting himself in his pit box right now. There we go, solidly in it, absolutely no problems for him. And he'll be off and away shortly. Lots of other cars starting to head their way down in now. So this is when we'll perhaps see the bulk of the drivers come down in. There was a good 6-7 cars that came down in on that last time. Here comes the battle for the race lead then. Benny Simonson wants that race lead back. Remember, every time you lead 3 laps here in this series, you will be able to get yourself a bonus point. So you know, in the end, it's kind of offsets the disadvantage of being in the lead early here, of not being able to fuel save. At least you're getting points on the board, though.
I still love that rule. It does create like a very unique kind of precedent when you get into these races. Like, do you want to fuel save or do you want to get points? Because it's not a case of, oh, you're just not getting any points if you don't lead a lap. That means that the driver right in front of you is also getting more and more points that you're not getting. And it could, if you're in the points lead, especially when we get around towards the last races in the season finale, those points, they can be critical. And now look at this, the top 2 win. Bit of a locker from Cat on the way in as well.
Yeah, and Philip Hammer following closely as well as, well, actually Anthony Cat stayed out. It was Hammer that had that big lockup coming down on towards pit lane there, as they'll now search for their pit boxes. Hammer gets himself stopped quite comfortably there. Let's have a look at the pit stop times. They've been it's been quite a varied spread in terms of pit stop times so far. Anything from 9 seconds up to as far as 15 seconds that I've seen, but I think those latter ones are more due to the pit box missing. But look at that from Philip Hammer. He does get out ahead of Benny Simonson there, so a track position gained once again for Mr. Hammer.
I think another thing to do with it as well is actually going to be about the fuel, because some drivers that came in earlier, they only filled in a partial tank, whereas these guys, I think they ran until it was dry, so they had to put in a full tank, which does add a couple of seconds longer into the race. And now we look at Anthony Cat, who still is running out there along with Vico and Lucetta. All 3 of those drivers still yet to pit as well.
Yeah, those are the only 3 drivers that have yet to come down on towards pit lane. So they've been able to stretch the fuel out as long as possible. But of course, Anthony Cat has no drafting partner, has no friends out there on circuit right now. So maybe that's going to be a slight disadvantage for him. But he's heading towards the end of the lap now. Through that very long right-hander, you peel off towards the pit lane, and Anthony Cat can now rest easy, as he's now going to be in the safe, loving arms of his pit crew in just a couple of moments' time. So we'll have to see where he falls in relation to everyone else, though. Yet more cars coming down in, and in fact, that's basically everyone that has yet to pit that has been able to get themselves down in now. By the way, Diogo Francisco leads this race at the moment ahead of, effectively ahead of Philippe Lebert and Benny Simpson. Those were the drivers that actually came down in way earlier, and they've been able to jump everyone. So that's the leading 2 cars there at the moment, 2 early pitters. They've gained a lot of time by doing what they did. Yes, they had shorter stops compared to your leading cars that just came down in, but maybe that's all that matters, because they can keep themselves out of trouble now at the very front.
They are also off cycle, it's worth noting as well, because unlike these drivers, they came in 6 and 8 laps earlier respectively, meaning that if these guys all have full tanks, and they fill their tanks up to the brim as well, they're going to be coming in about 8 laps sooner than these guys. So they are pretty far off cycle at the moment.
Yeah, so Philippe Lebert has just slingshotted himself past Diogo Francisco there. They're going to try and push on 110%. Gap between those two and the rest of the field, 5 seconds at the moment. So they've got a big buffer to work with, and this could potentially turn out to be a pretty good strategy for both Philippe Lebert and Diogo Francisco. Coming down in early, avoiding all the all the trains going on out there. But of course, like you mentioned, their fuel concern comes a little bit later on in the race if they've currently short fueled at the moment, because we saw for the leaders it was 14, 15-ish second stops. Meanwhile, for Philippe Lebert and Francisco, they did a 10-second stop and an 11.5-second stop each. So they at least took a couple of seconds less fuel than the rest of your leaders did.
And what I find funny about that is if you look at the gaps on the left side of the screen there, it's about a 5-second gap at the pit stops. The gap between them is 5 seconds as well, meaning if they stop with the rest of the leaders, they'd be right with them still as well. So it was just the 5 seconds in the pit stops that made the difference. It was not fresh tires or anything like that for the undercut. You can see the swap positions up there again for the lead. I think what they're doing is trying to swap draft here. So they're trying to let the other guys have a big run and then slingshot their way up to try to build the gap.
So yeah, you can see the stint lengths now on the left side. You can see how much longer that Francisco and Lebert have been out on this stint compared to everyone else at the very front there. So 7 laps for Francisco, 9 laps for Lebert, and the guys behind 2 laps, 1 lap, and some such as well. So that's the difference in the strategy with everyone involved in that one right now. So yeah, this is going to be interesting to keep track of. Ooh, Ludwig Guidi. I think Guidi has had a big issue here. Let's take a look at it and get ourselves cycled back, because I don't think he. Let's have a look. What happened to Guidi here? Because he went all of a sudden. I wonder if it's technical problems or if it's something else. We'll just have to let this one run through, Nolan. Let's see what happens.
I think his 2000 ping might answer the question here pretty quickly.
There it is. I can't see pings easily on my production setup, unfortunately, so I wouldn't be able to tell. But yeah, that's unfortunate there for Ludwig Guidi. Technical problems means he disconnects from the server and he cycles down the order. That one is super unfortunate for him there. It's one of those things that you simply can't control, and hopefully he'll be able to at least maybe reconnect quickly, get back out there, recover positions off of people who have retired, and that might have problems a little bit later on as well. It's always worth it, considering with the point system the way it is, everyone technically scores points here in this one. It's just a matter of how far up the order you finish. So if he can get back going and gain a couple of positions, then that might just help.
Well, he's kind of going in and out at the moment, but he is still up there with that train.
Really?
You can even see him. Yeah, he's up there in 8th still. He's just kind of going in and out at the moment, so it's a bit sketchy back there, but he's trying. He's trying to pull in there.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, because he went for a good 5-10 seconds, and that usually means that they're basically down and out, and you're not going to get them back in the race. But somehow, by some internet black magic, I think Ludwig Guidi has been able to keep himself in this race, which is pretty surprising here. So let's hope his internet hangs on by a thread and he's able to continue on out there. It's going to be a big distraction though for everyone in this train right now, because they're seeing all these issues happen, and you don't want to take any risks, do you?
No, you absolutely don't. Although, on the one hand, if you do end up tangling with them, there's only one thing you can really blame for it.
I suppose it's the sim racing driver's favorite excuse for contact, I think. But yeah, I'm seeing him now drop even further down the order than when I saw him last time. So I think it's finally the final nail in the coffin with regards to Ludwig Guidi's network conditions at the moment. So yeah, I'm half expecting that iRacing message to come through in just a couple of moments that he has officially gone from the server. But enough about that, though. Lap number 18 of 32. We're getting towards the halfway point now. Well, we're well over the... yeah, we are getting towards the halfway point now. So it's let's see what the state of the race is. So we got Benny Simonson leading this P3 train at the moment. This is what I would say is the... Oh, my word, Anthony Cat! He just dives him in towards China Beach, and my word, Benny Simonson's not going to be too happy about that one. That caught us by surprise there. Big, big lunge. Now Benny Simpson's coming back around. You can see the major damage there on Anthony Cat. Let's take ourselves a replay of this one then from up above. Here comes the 3 wide, or at least briefly 3 wide moment. Cat into the corner, locks up, and just the only way the trajectory was going was directly into the side of Benny Simonson.
And the damage on Anthony Cat is actually floor damage here, surprisingly. I've never actually seen that before here on the surface here, Connor, but there is actually floor damage on Anthony Cat. Sparks flying from the underside of his car, and that's causing him to really slow here. No wing damage, no suspension damage. It's the floor of the car that got destroyed in that here.
Yeah, big amount of contacts, left front as well. I think it was the case that left front for the suspension's now been bent up and has artificially sort of lowered the ride height of the car on the front there. And actually, while you can see the front of the car dragging on the ground with the sparks flying, like you said. So a huge amount of damage there for Anthony Cat. He has been able to bring it down on towards the pit lane, as you can see him struggling to keep it on circuit here in the replay. But yeah, I mean, if you wanted a display of the new damage model here in iRacing, well, it's not so new now on these Skip Barber cars, is it? It's been around for a while, but yeah, that's again, it was all Anthony Cat's doing, if you ask me, that incident. So again, the stewards will have a little look at that after the race, as they do with all the incidents that happen up and down the field here today. But yeah, you got to feel bad for Simonson, though, because there he is. Somehow hasn't really gotten away. Well, he's gotten away with not too much damage here, really. He's down in P5 now, yes, but that car is not as damaged as I would have thought it would have been from an impact like that.
Philippe Lebert down to the lane from the race lead, and through the SWAT drive that he and Francisco are doing, they did build another 3/10 up on their gap. It was up from about 5.3 up to 5.6, and this is going to be the last stop for Lebert on the day, I'm pretty sure. We can expect Francisco to come down to the next couple of laps here as well, so they're going to be good to go to the end of this thing here now. Thing is, the other drivers, they're not going to have to make as long of a pit stop, because look at this now, 16.2 second pit stop for Lebert.
Yeah, it's a very long stop for Lebert, so let's see if he's able to get himself back into the thick of things. Then you can see this battling here, P6 on circuit between Sam Keatit and Lucetta here, as they will take it wheel to wheel down the back straight away and in towards China Beach. Now, can Lucetta get a move back? No, he's way too far back, and is way slow actually coming down in towards the braking zone as well. So again, the maybe potential fuel games going on in that sort of situation. But here's the Philip Hammer and now Kane Halliburton battle. Of course, Halliburton, the championship leader coming into this, and well, he looks to try to extend his advantage here after this one is done. But nothing's a guarantee, especially when we've had well, we've had technically 4 crazy finishes to each of the races that we've had so far this season. So yeah, I won't count it. I won't say it's over until it's over.
And there is Sam Keeter now just coming down to pit road. So even more drivers started to elect to make the dive down into the lane to kind of get their final pit stop sorted here. This is now with 12 to go, excuse me. So not a lot of time anymore for these drivers to start to make things work. There is time starting to tick away, which does still surprise me by just how quickly these races fly by.
Yeah, it is. Time flies when you're having fun, I think is probably the phrase I'll use for that one. It's a phrase I used a lot in the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup broadcast that we had yesterday, given how early that season started and how great the races are. The races are great in here as well. Halliburton closing up on the brakes in towards China Beach this time around, but again, content to just sit behind and just look after those fuel numbers and get that short stop for the very end of the event. Francisco hasn't come in just yet. I would expect him to do so. If not this lap, then the next lap. I think it'll be possibly, but you know, the longer he can push out this fuel, actually, the better. He still holds that 5.5 second advantage over second.
Yeah, so the more fuel he can push out, like you said, that is the better, because that's still less time that he's got to sit there in the pit stop. So if this strategy works, we could see Francisco coming down the top and winning this race. He's now down to the lane, just so close to the grass and so close to Speedy as well.
Yeah, you have to be so careful, otherwise, you know, the automated system is gonna, well, frown upon you for coming down towards the pit lane that quickly. Let's see what the pit stop time is for Diogo Francisco then. We're expecting it to be a long stop, just like Philippe Leber's was. We had Joshua Dancy coming on towards the pit lane as well. So yeah, it is another long stop here for Francisco, but that's what we expected. Just over 15 seconds stationary on the pit lane, and he will be off and away. Where's he going to rejoin in relation to everyone else? He'll rejoin maybe in the region of Philippe Leber. Yeah, he's just ahead of him, and well, quite ahead of him at that. So great stuff there from Diogo Francisco. So now this is technically the battle for the race lead, the side-by-side going on right now, and well, that's Philippe Leber getting himself to the pointy end of the field, where we're used to seeing him, I should say, and going to be, well, attempting to pick up those leading lap points.
So Kane Halliburton out in front by about 1/3 of a second at the moment. Kind of touching on why Leber is so far back. His stop was about 1.5 seconds longer than Francisco's was, so that will explain as to why Leber was about 2 seconds back upon pit exit here. But Halliburton still did a good job to maintain this race lead, still hanging on here with Philip Hammer just behind him. Do either of these drivers come on down? Halliburton takes to the lane.
Yeah, he does. And there he is on pit entry there. And, well, this is going to be telling now, because he was the official race leader, albeit for a moment, coming down on towards pit lane there. We'll have to see where he comes out in relation to... Oh, you can see, because he's at the front pit stall, he has to angle his car towards the pit exit. So, you know, that's always smart to do when you're that front pit stall. Now, where is Diogo Francisco? There is Francisco. Where is Kane Halliburton coming off of the lane right now? Well, we'll just have to wait and see, and he's quite far back through the order. So there's Kane Halliburton coming out now. He's a good, 2-3 seconds behind the likes of Francisco and Leber at the moment. So Francisco and Leber continuing to make this strategy work.
The strategy is key, and it looks like the strategy to pit sooner was definitely a big one. Now, here's the other critical thing. They came in about 9 laps, I want to say, into the race, if memory serves me right here. But there is still about 11 laps to go here, so Halliburton could not make the 9-second stop that these guys did initially because of that.
Yeah, so, yeah, it's always intriguing and always exciting to see how these things figure out. It's brilliant stuff. It's not just the action that goes on out there on circuit, it's the action in the minds of the drivers and in the strategy as well. You don't often see it in sprint racing like this, but due to the format, it really does allow that with the very small fuel tanks and some such. So, yeah, lap 23 of 32. We are getting in towards the final third of the event now. Francisco just kind of stuck up behind Remco Plesgia here, and well, that number's 117 car does have to make his final pit stop, so it's a bit of traffic here that Diogo Francisco has to deal with, but it's traffic that is allowed to defend its position, because it is a battle for position.
That it is. So now, what will Francisco be able to do here? I mean, this is going to be pretty critical here for Francisco here as he tries to get past the 117, and it looks like he'll be able to get up the inside this time by, and yep, sure enough, Remco lets off and allows Francisco to take the position away from him, realizes that he has yet to come down to pit yet. Francisco's already made his last stop. No point in really fighting with him when you know he's going to pass you anyway in a couple laps here when you're on pit road.
Yeah, so it's race conservation when you're in that situation. You have to know who you're going to be fighting. It's the same sort of topics that we bring up during endurance races, Nolan. You have to know who you're fighting on the strategy. It's no point in trying to fight with someone, even if they're in your own class, for example, in multi-class endurance racing, if it's not going to gain you anything at the end of the day because you're not fighting them. So yeah, it's just you got to be sensible. I know racing drivers, they want to fight with anything out there on circuit, no matter if it's laps down or laps ahead or in a different class, but sometimes you do have to be just that little bit more sensible. Still waiting for the vast majority of drivers to come down in towards pit lane for their final stops, though it's the situation in the battle we were just watching. It's the situation here at the very front as well, with both Philip Hammer and Benny Simonsen. I'll expect them come down in the next few laps, I would say. I would not pin an exact lap on it, as I'm a bit of a coward in that respect, but one driver who is in is currently Giuseppe Tellini. He's come down in for his stop.
Only an 11-second stop for Tellini. He is off and away. He's one of the drivers that was kind of in the back, though, for the entirety of this race, so we're definitely not expecting him to be able to really contend here for a race victory, especially when you're so far down the order. Hero appears to also be down in the lane with the 23 car down in 16th at the moment. He's likely going to drop down a few more spots. And now Philip Hammer and Benny Simonsen are still right nose and tail with each other here, as Simonsen nearly ran Philip Hammer over there through turn 6.
Yeah, he did. It was carrying a lot of momentum and applying the pressure right onto the rear of Philip Hammer's car. But of course, both of them will have to make a visit on towards pit lane at some point over the next couple of laps. It's just a matter of when. Through the final corner now. They're coming towards the end of 11 laps on their stint, and there we go. There's the decision. Benny Simonsen comes down on towards pit lane, attacks the grass on the inside and snatches a break as well. That's how much he was committed to pit lane there and trying to gain as much time on pit entry as is possible.
Now with less than 9 laps to go here, where does Simonsen come out in relation to Francisco? That's going to be critical here. Did Francisco get the strategy right, or will Simonsen take a shorter stop here in a short field of car? He's got the ability to do so here. 9.9 seconds, 10.3 seconds, excuse me. So this actually might get him here. Benny Simonsen out of the lane, and there is Philippe Lebert just coming through. Francisco is through, but he's still battling with Lebert on the exit here.
Yeah, so Francisco is clear, but Lebert is not, as far as that car that just came off the pit lane, Benny Simonsen. But now Lebert is clear. He was able to squeak himself ahead. Gustavo Conde is sort of the third party in on this battle right now, but he has yet to complete his final stop. So we'll have to, he'll probably do that at the end of this lap. Here comes Benny Simonsen back on Philippe Lebert. Then they're going to go side by side down the back straight. This is fighting tooth and nail now, but it looks like Philippe Lebert is going to cut his losses and duck back in line and back into the slipstream. But Francisco still remains 1.8 seconds ahead of these guys.
And still not very far. That still means that any really small mistake here could very well put him within the clutches here of Benny Simonsen to help him to reel that draft back in. So we'll have to wait and see here. There still is a lot of time to go in this race, as there's a mistake, runs a little bit wide through the corner there, but it doesn't cost him too much time. That's the good thing about the Skip Barber cars. They can afford to run a little bit wider through these corners, which you wouldn't be able to do if you were in like an Indy Pro 2000, for example.
Yeah, it's a little bit more forgiving if you decide to go off-roading. But here comes Philip Hammer down on towards pit lane, so he's going to get out into this battle perhaps as well. So we'll get to see that. There's the traffic coming through. There's Diogo Francisco through, and there's the battle with Simonsen and Lebert behind as well. So, and well, Philip Hammer has come out just ahead of that battle, and so he has the track position now over both Benny Simonsen and Philippe Lebert. So great stuff for him to try and hold on to his track position. Still very much involved in the current battle for what I would say is effective P2 at the moment.
Now the question is, what does Simonsen do? Does he try to pass Hammer here? Does he try to maybe sit back and allow himself to try to reel in Francisco? He's going to go for it here. and try to maybe see if Simonson can run down Diogo Francisco here. The gap is back up here at about 1.7 seconds. A long way to go, and not a lot of time to do it as they're coming to 5 laps to go this next time by.
Yeah, not a lot of laps yet to be logged. You know, it's a pretty short track here. You know, even though the lap times you can see are 135s and 136s, that's in a relatively slow Skip Barber car. So it's you know, that's just how short this lap is. But Benny Simonson leading this, what I'm calling the effective P2 train around. But of course, you now have Alexis Vico and Manuel Ujeta down on towards the pit lane. So this should mean that there's Diogo Francisco. He's going to come across the line. He's going to re-inherit the race lead finally, as those 2 remaining cars have now come down in. So now the positions are a lot more representative of what they actually are. So Francisco leads from Simonson, from Hammer, from Lebert. So this is the state of the race now, Nolan. All the stops have been completed. It's now driver versus driver rather than the strategies at play.
Kane Halliburton had a really wide moment for turn 1, went all 4 wheels off and jumped across the access road a little bit and took out about half the cones that sit across there as well. That was just after turn number 1, so Halliburton pushed it a little bit too wide, and it shows that you still can't push these Formula 2000s too much.
There he is coming out of the first corner, doing a little bit of off-roading there. Wonderful stuff.
Beautiful shot. Oh, I just missed the cone too at the entry.
Yeah, he did. So there we go. Fantastic stuff. But Kane Halliburton, it's not the fastest way around the circuit, even if it was amazing to look at. But my words, he's now dropped himself about 1.5 seconds off of Lebert and where Lebert, Hammer, and Simonson are at the moment. Meanwhile, Simonson getting himself up into P2 now. So he was able to make that happen, but I have to wonder if the strategy here for Hammer and Lebert, knowing Simonson's, you know, clean air pace, if they're just going to let him pull them around the circuit and get up to the race leader of Diogo Francisco, as that gap has slowly but steadily started to sort of close in a little bit. 1.7 seconds across the line.
I don't think it's going to be enough, though. That's only about 0.04 of a second that they gained in the entire last lap, and they've got themselves only 4 to go here. I don't think they're going to have enough time to catch Francisco unless he really makes a big mistake. And a bit really big there to the inside of the racetrack, I guess, trying to keep it from going into the draft. They're going to try to reel him in, but I don't think they got the time to do it.
Yeah, they possibly don't. They're starting to run out of laps at this point, and they're not making as much forward progress as they would have hoped to try and surmount that gap. But remember Interlagos, you know, it was a fuel dropper at the end of that race, which meant the leader had to come down towards pit lane. It might happen again here today if there's been a miscalculation. But we will just have to watch with bated breath. That's certainly what Simonson, Hammer, and Lebert are hoping right now. If they can't get the laps required to be able to catch your race leader, they have to be hoping that Francisco has to do a lot of fuel saving in these closing laps, and ideally for them, not even make it to the check-in.
So this battle from second through fourth here is about the biggest one that we got on the track at the moment. Most other drivers are just kind of running all by their lonesome out there. It has been a pretty quiet race here today, all things considered, you know, considering how wild these races usually end up being, especially when we get around at this point in time.
Yeah, they do. I think that's due to the fact that this isn't too much of a draft track. I think being completely honest there, it just allows everyone to separate themselves out just that little bit more than they otherwise would do so, as we'll get the shot of these guys coming through that first turn. And in fact, that gap to the race leader extended slightly by about 1/10 of a second on that last lap. So Francisco's doing all he needs to do as far as his task of winning this race. But again, you can't be affording to have late race fuel dramas, and you have to make sure that the race win is signed, sealed, and delivered, and there's no doubt in the mind coming towards the end here. But it looks like everything's still left on the table for P2. They might even decide to go 3 wide here down towards China Beach. Philip Hammer towards the outside of Simonson. No 3 wide in this instance. Battle of the late breakers. Here comes Leber as well, trying to find the lane through as they go up and down the hills and crests here at Mid-Ohio. Leber trying to gain the position over Hammer. Leber has gained the position over Hammer as Hammer tries to find the cutback but finds no success.
Yeah, I think they've finally given up on trying to run to the race lead, and they decided to just run it down between themselves here. And so now, because of the battle, though, that late move from Leber, that's allowed Simonson to now go a bit of a gap here over the third position driver of Leber, who's going to have to use a bit of the draft here in order to try to claw his way back up. Now, this track, like you said, not very draft heavy. It doesn't have a lot of draft at all. Now, that is very unlike the next 2 tracks that are coming up here at Imola and Hockenheim, which, oh boy, those are bound to be some exciting races.
Yeah, Hockenheim especially, because that's going to be yet another draft track. It's gonna, I mean, Imola is, has a very long pit straight where you can get a lot of drafting done, but otherwise it's just chicanes and a hairpin in the middle. So, but yeah, in Hockenheim, that's going to be pretty crazy. Let's see how many Skip Barber cars that we can get abreast coming in towards the hairpin there. That's the question you have to be asking, because it's a very wide bit of circuit and a very inviting apex to try and sling it down towards the inside on.
I'm gonna opt for 4 at that one.
Well, you're lowballing it there. I'm expecting 5.
Oh, really?
5 or 6. Yeah, exactly. But Philippe Leber continuing to having to look ahead and behind at the moment, because he's trying to look onto the back of Simonson, but Hammer is giving him hell at the moment in terms of some of these moves into these corners. So it's always a tricky situation to be in, the meat in the sandwich with, the 2 pieces of bread not being too friendly with you.
And Leber at the moment in a bit of a sandwich here. He knows he's trying to get past Benny Simonson, but he also doesn't want to let Philip Hammer pass. All this battle has allowed Kane Halliburton to kind of throw his back into the ring. So it's about a 4-car fight here now for the second position. And they're coming up to the white flag here, though, so this is about to get all sorts of exciting, as they've only really got one more big pass opportunity left in this race.
Yeah, absolutely. So across the line they head, and this is confirmed the final lap here. We're on the 32nd lap, and it's going to be only a couple of chances left for Philippe Leber to get himself up into that P2 he so desperately wants, and the good points haul that comes with it. He's going to look for a move here into the hairpin. Simonson going slightly defensive there, just trying to cover off the line, but it's going to be about the runoff as well, and the draft down in towards China Beach 2, as there's now 4 cars involved in this P2 fight. I don't know which way it's going to go, but let's just enjoy it here on this final lap. Benny Simonson has to do all of the defending at the moment. Goes all the way towards the inside. Leber trying to find some speed around the outside, 2x2. In towards China Beach. There's a little bit of contact. Somehow they're able to keep it together and continue on this battle up over the crest, through the left, coming up towards the right. Simonson, there's more contact. It shoves Leber out into the offline there, out into the dust and into the marbles, and there might be some damage there to Philippe Leber. Elbows out racing here in the final lap, and it continues on as Halliburton almost ran into the back of Simonson there, coming in towards the middle sector, but now in towards the final couple of corners of the lap. And here comes Kane Halliburton. Then he won't quite be able to do it, looking for the up and under. There's more contact for P2. Big crash for P2. Hammer goes through. Hammer goes through into second place. By the way, Diogo Francisco wins this race. We were so preoccupied with the battle for P2 that we failed to show him coming across the line, but he's probably not going to mind. He takes all the glory for Racecraft Esports. But what happened here? There's the injured car of Philippe Leber. Where is Halliburton? He's just about coming across the line. Simonson didn't make it to the line, I don't think. But let's take another look at that, because my word, I have never quite seen a finish like that in my time commentating this series. Let's take a look at it. Here's Benny Simonson leading in towards the final sector. Halliburton all over the back of him. He's going to go for the lunge into the second to last corner. Simonson defending the inside, and that's all Halliburton for me. He was going for a gap that simply did not exist, and now those two cars were stranded in towards those final couple of corners. But again, another 2K Skip Barber World Cup event, Nolan, and another crazy finish.
Yeah, the gap just was never open for Halliburton. It was never going to be open. I think that might be one of the stewards you have to take a look after the race as well. That was just a bit of an unnecessary accident there.
Yeah, very much unnecessary. But let's have a look at your official race results, or, well, I guess they're slightly unofficial due to the post-race reviews. But Diogo Francisco wins with a brilliant strategy, with coming down in so early on that first stop and pushing out the fuel on that stint and the second one. So fantastic stuff there from Diogo Francisco to come away with the win by 3.4 seconds. Philip Hammer, under the nose of Halliburton and Simonsen, finds the line through and comes home in P2. Philippe Leber, P3 for him, so podium finish for Leber as Alexis Vico, P4, Lucetta, P5. A lot of drivers not expecting to gain those two positions towards the end of the race there. Sam Kita, P6, Kane Halliburton, P7, Giuseppe Tellini, P8, Joshua Dancier, P9, and George Matuszynski in P10. Martin Cruz, big competitor early on, just kind of fell back to the field though in P11. Takasawa Konde P12, Remco Pleasure in P13, Anthony Cap P14, Hans Hoyer 15th, and then you see the bottom half of the runners. Kemp, Griffin, McGowan, Rebalta, Zamolo will bring things down to P20, and then at the very back of the field, Fogarini got involved in an incident early on. That wasn't their fault, really. And Mark Sierra in P22. Ali Favero in P3. And you got Zingretti, Edwards, Simonsen, due to taking the tow back to pit lane on that final lap. He was a couple of corners away from the checkered flag, but due to taking the tow, he finishes one lap down, P26. Ludo Guidi, P27, with Edwin Valerino, P28, and Daniele Camerini is the last finisher in P number 29 here today. So we're going to have to take a little bit of a breather here, and we have to get ourselves ready and waiting and prepared for the interviews coming up in just a couple of moments' time, Nolan. But again, it's not what we want to see coming towards the end of a race, a crash like that, where it's kind of obvious to us who was at fault. But again, it just goes to show if with how close the top of this field is, if you don't go for those sorts of moves, then you're always going to finish behind.
I mean, it's exactly what Philippe Lebert wanted to see, because it allowed him to come back from getting the massive bit of floor damage that he had and ending up finishing in third because of it, because the top two ended up taking themselves out. So it's what Lebert wanted to see, but it's just a bit of a shame that it had to come in that fashion. It was not a very pretty sight, I think it's safe to say.
Yeah, not very pretty at all, but we do have one of the drivers that was involved in the last lap drama. Maybe not in the last couple of corners, but still last lap drama nonetheless. We'll bring Philippe Leber in, and Nolan, you're standing by with Mr. Leber, who finished in P3 here today.
Well, Mr. Lebert, what a race it was indeed, and it definitely was a bit of a wild finish right there at the end. Definitely, I think, a bit more crazy than we expected it to see. Kind of walk us through that last lap there and how it all looked from your end.
Well, as you saw, it's pretty difficult to pass here, so it had to happen on the last lap. I tried to be in P3 after Diogo was gone. There was no way we could catch him, but I wanted to be behind Benny at the last lap to see if I could try something. And then, yeah, as you can see, it didn't work very well. I made a mistake and I had damage. And then I got very lucky that Benny and Kane came together, I think. Unlucky for them, but so an unexpected podium in the end.
You and Diogo were the only two drivers that really came down early on, about 8 laps into the race. Everybody else stayed out for about another 4 or 5 until they decided to come on down. What was kind of the thought process behind that pit strategy? Because it certainly worked out for you guys up until the last stint.
Well, I was kind of expecting that Benny and the guys up front would start fighting when the pit stop window got closer. So I didn't want to get involved in that and be slowed down. So I decided to pit early, and so did Diogo. We didn't talk, so we must have thought the same thing. But that turned out to be a good decision because after the first stop we came out ahead, but that was because we were light. We had to add less fuel. And then after the second stop, we were right at the front. So that was a good gamble, I think.
And then, of course, we head on over to the next race at Imola. Now, that is going to be an interesting race as well. Definitely a bit more draft heavy than this one was, especially down through Ravazza all the way up through to turn number 1. So, what do you think the racing is going to be like when we get around to the Italian racetrack?
Well, it's a very good track for the Skippy. It doesn't look that way because of the long straights, but it's not that easy to pass. We had a few 2K races there, and they were all a nail biter till the end. So I expect a lot of strategy, and I think it's a double header, so the sprint race will probably be mayhem.
And before I let you go here, Philippe, anybody that you'd like to shout out for us today?
Yeah, I want to thank you guys for the excellent broadcast. You stepped up this season, and the quality is top notch. So, congrats on that.
Well, thank you very much, Felipe. It does mean a lot to us. And of course, this is a league that we've been, broadcasting for a very long time. Of course, we had that big break, but it's great to be back, and well, best of luck for your future races.
Thank you.
So that was Philippe Lebert finishing in P3 here today. A bit of a surprise podium, all things considered, due to the issues that befell Benny Simonson and Kane Halliburton at the very front there. But again, it's another one in the books, and another one where we say, Nolan, at the end of the event, we can't possibly get a more insane finish than that. It's again, I think we should now set the expectation coming into these races where it's going to be a complete unknown who finishes on podium positions in the final couple of laps.
Oh, I had already set myself that expectation from the very first sprint race of the season based on how that racing went. I mean, this is one of those series where it's always just so tight and so close right to the end. It is very, very hard to know who's going to finish where until the checkered flag drops.
It's almost impossible, and that's why we enjoy this series so much. There's a lot of big unknowns, and every single given week we might see a completely different winner in completely different circumstances. But again, well, that's going to be all that we have time for here for this one, unfortunately. My name has been Connery Merrick. I've been joined by the one, the only Mr. Nolan Rempel here today. And, well, you'll want to be joining us every single week from here on out. Every single week that we're on, I should say. Of course, we're not exactly on every week here for the 2K Skip Barber World Cup, but we are going to round number 4 at Imola on May the 9th. So in a couple of weeks' time there, we'll be heading to one of the most famous circuits in Italy, right next to Monza. I would say in the second on the list as far as my power rankings of Italian tracks go. Imola is coming up next in the Skip Barber 2K World Cup. You don't want to miss it in a couple of weeks' time. But for now, we have to wrap up and say goodbye.